Welcome to the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where we simplify the complexities of your leadership journey. I'm Scott, and joining me is our go-to leadership guru, Dr. Michael David Morales, known to many as Mo.
Hey, Scotty. It's good to be here, man. Let's do it.
Well, hobbits, a creature that many of us have heard of. We know that they've got some pretty big, hairy feet and a propensity to remain more of a quiet, shyer folk. And one of these so-called hobbits, one of the more famous ones, known as Bilbo Baggins, starts off as a pretty ordinary hobbit. So he lives a pretty relaxing life in the Shire and enjoys his peace and quiet. Doesn't really like to do kind of anything, likes being by himself, likes staying at home. But everything really changes when he gets roped into this just grand adventure with his friend Gandalf and a bunch of dwarves that are led by an individual named Thorin Oakenshield. And the whole goal of this journey is to take back their home from a dragon, Smaug. And as they travel, Bilbo and the dwarves and Gandalf really face all sorts of crazy dangers. So think trolls, goblins, giant spiders, the likes. He has to go ahead and prove that he's got some serious courage and quick thinking. He comes up with clever plans like using the One Ring to sneak past goblins. And throughout his journey, he grows into a leader who earns the dwarves' respect, even though they weren't sure about him at first. So Bilbo's empathy really shines when he interacts with other characters, like Gollum, for instance, using his wit instead of violence to handle tricky situations. And he even shows his diplomatic side when he has to eventually negotiate. And this definitely isn't a spoiler because the books have been out for, I don't even know how many years, but shows his diplomatic side when he's negotiating with Smaug, the dragon, and proves that sometimes talking things out is the best way to lead. And really, by the end of it all, Bilbo kind of stands out as really a key player in this kind of treasure dispute that happens and pushes for peace with everybody involved. And when it finally comes time where he ends up back in the Shire, he's just completely changed. So different than the individual that he was prior to leaving the Shire. And that's really because he learned so much about courage and friendship and kind of what it means to stand up for what's right. And so Bilbo's journey in general is just a really great reminder that even the most unlikely heroes can become leaders when faced with their tough challenges. And I know today we're diving into a crucial topic for anyone in a leadership type position. But what leadership traits do you have? Understanding your leadership traits is more than just knowing kind of what your strengths are, although your strengths are important. But it's about how those traits can actually influence the way that you lead your team. So Mo, why is this topic so important for our leaders to understand?
Yeah, the topic of leadership traits is really important because when you're looking for a new team or you're moving up in a company or moving laterally in a company, you need to know what your traits are and what the traits are of the people that you're going to be working with, because that really matters. So we have three things to think about when we talk about leadership traits today. And the first one is this. Self-awareness as a foundation of leadership is very important when talking about leadership traits. So if you don't know who the CEO of Microsoft is, it's a guy named Satya Nadella, and he's got a really great story. In 2014, Nadella's leadership was really credited with revitalizing the company. The guy was born in India. He joined Microsoft in 1992, and he worked in a ton of different leadership roles across the company before becoming CEO. Under his leadership, Microsoft really shifted its focus to cloud computing, artificial intelligence, fostering a culture of collaboration. And so Nadella is known for what many call an empathetic leadership style. He emphasizes continuous learning, innovation, and a growth mindset. So his approach transformed Microsoft into a more open company, and it made it one of the most valuable corporations in the world.
Wow, that's pretty crazy to just kind of see how quickly that company has changed and really just grown. I mean, and to think too how innovated that they are into just so many different companies and universities. And I think about different workplaces I've been where their entire web-based system is just based off of Microsoft, utilizing Microsoft. And so that's just super amazing, the things that he's done to kind of grow that company.
Yeah, and what's really great about Nadella is that he is very self-aware And he helps and allows his leaders to leverage their strengths and addresses weaknesses, but in a way that it fosters a growth mindset, which really puts people at ease. People love working with them. And so leaders who understand their own traits, like Nadella does, can create a more authentic leadership style. It's easy for him to lead the way that he does because that's who he is. He's not
Mm.
fake. People know what they're going to get, and this builds trust and respect within the team.
Yeah. So then, and I think we've hit on this before, but you mentioned, that he's not fake. He's true to himself. And one of the most popular lines out there, right? Fake it till you make it. And so how does that type of mentality or idea come into developing our leadership traits? And is that something that our leaders and that we really should just throw straight out the window? Or is there some sort of truth to that when we're talking about things like leadership traits?
Yeah, that's a great question because I don't necessarily love the whole fake it till you make it thing. I think that you need to really know what you want, set it, make those dreams goals. The way that you make a dream a goal is you write it down and it goes from being something ethereal. Then now you're onto something. And so after that, the way that you act is not really faking it. You're acting in a way that you're going to realize your goals one day. And so, for
Mm.
instance, I remember one of my business mentors told me years ago when I was a young man, and this is nothing new, but when I heard it for the first time from this guy, he said, Mo, you want to dress for the job you want, not for the job that you have. And man, that really just stuck with me. And again, like I'm a swim coach, right? I'm not going to wear a suit to work. But if I want to be respected in the community, I might dress a little bit differently on deck. And so
Mm.
wherever you're at right now, what kind of leader do you want to be? What are your traits? How do you lead? And how can you do it authentically? Nadella uses both an empathetic leadership style, and within that, we see sympathetic leadership. And that came early on in his tenure with Microsoft. He prioritized empathy and emotional intelligence as core values for his team. So, shortly after becoming CEO in 2014, Nadella spoke about his own personal experiences, and practically this was about his son Zane. Zane was born with cerebral palsy, and so this really shaped his approach. He shared that being a father to a child with special needs taught him empathy on a deep level, and it helped him in the way that he influenced others and approached leading even his teams at work. He was the same guy at home as he was at work. And so, one significant story that Nadella reflects on within his sympathetic leadership style occurred when he focused on changing Microsoft's internal culture from one that was focused deeply on competitiveness and individual success to one that's more collaborative and inclusive, and the entire environment changed. And so prior to his leadership, Microsoft had a reputation for fostering like cutthroat, know-it-all kind of culture. Nadella believed that this mindset stifled innovation and growth. Instead of focusing on that competition, he wanted to create a culture of learn it all, where employees were encouraged to continuously grow and collaborate without fear of failure of judgment. And it really changed the way that people worked together and for him and with him.
That's really great. So I absolutely love that. And I love what you said about that idea of dressing for the part that you want, not the part that you have. And that just so rings through. That's actually something that my dad is like pushed. I even think back, I remember when I was in college and I used to be a student aquatic supervisor, and I had the privilege of being part of the hiring process to get experience in that. And I just remember that, when you're hiring people, the people that stood out and the students that stood out looking for jobs for myself were the ones that took the time and effort to change. And I mean, I vividly remember having potential candidates come in one time, and we had a wide range. We had, people in polos and khakis, and we had people that were in full suits. And then I remember there was a guy that came in and literally had come straight from the gym into this interview, was in his gym clothes, had just worked out, brought his gym bag. And I
To the
remember
interview.
talking to the interview, and I remember talking to the other student supervisors, and I said, he's a no. And they were like, why? Like, he seems like a great guy. And I was like, he doesn't obviously care enough about this job to put in the effort to even shower after he went to the gym. I said, I don't think he's the type of person that's going to take on the responsibility to do this. And so all that to say, like, that just resonated so just much with me, that idea of dressing for that job that you want, knowing that the time and effort that you put into that reflects on you as a leader and as an individual. And I know you mentioned too the idea about goals, and I know that kind of takes us into our second point of today. So Mo, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one because point two is aligning traits with leadership goals is important to your leadership. And so I want to tell a story. If you don't know who Sarah Blakely is, she is the founder of a company called Spanx, and it's a remarkable entrepreneurial success story. Before creating Spanx, she worked as a door-to-door fax machine salesperson. Can you imagine selling fax machines door to door? And so obviously she was frustrated at one point with the limitations of traditional
Who
shapewear
wouldn't
because she
be?
was seriously, and she was walking around all day and she was just really uncomfortable. And so her personal experience of being uncomfortable day in and day out made her just really hate what she was doing. She had the idea, get this, of cutting the feet off of her pantyhose to create a more flattering undergarment that wouldn't show through clothes. I mean, she was just thinking way ahead, right? And so this simple innovation sparked the creation of Spanx. And so despite having no background in fashion or business, Blakely invested a mere $5,000 to develop the first Spanx prototype. After countless rejections from manufacturers and retailers, she finally convinced Neiman Marcus to carry her products. Spanx quickly gained popularity, receiving a major boost by the one and only Oprah Winfrey, named this one of her favorite things in 2000. And so Blakely's journey highlights perseverance, creativity, and a belief in her product. And so over time, Spanx expanded from a single product into a full line of shapewear, and Blakely became the youngest self-made female billionaire. Her story serves as an inspiring example of how determination, resourcefulness, and problem solving can lead to extraordinary success.
Yeah, I think her story is amazing, but I also think the fact I'm just envisioning a door-to-door salesman lugging around a fax machine. Like, I mean, we have one in the office I work in, and it is not a small thing. Like, those definitely don't fit in your pocket. And so,
No, they don't.
gosh, I mean, but maybe that's what it took to create Spanx. So, man. So I guess the question that I really have for you kind of coming out of that is just how can our leaders really identify which personal traits that they have that best align with their organization's mission? Because we think about mission all the time and we think about how important
We
that
do.
is, and we want to align with that, and we want to build into that mission. So how do we really identify like which traits are going to fit best with that?
You can start thinking, what are the traits that I have? But let's talk about some of Sarah Blakely's personal traits to see if you can see, okay, hearing that story, I can figure out what kind of traits do I have? So she had traits such as creativity, perseverance, problem solving, adaptability, and those are all really crucial in the entrepreneurial world and to have success there. So leaders can draw parallels from her experience in identifying which personal traits align best with their organization's mission by following these steps. First of all is this: self-awareness and reflection. Just as Blakely recognized a personal need and turned it into an opportunity, leaders, you have to first understand your own personal strengths and weaknesses. By reflecting on your past successes and challenges, you can identify traits that have helped you to excel. You need to find traits that align with your organization's values, like innovation, persistence, customer focus, whatever it is that your company does. Are you in the right company? Are you the right fit? Second is this: leaders need to have a deep understanding of their organization's mission and core values. You got to know them. You've got to know what the mission statement is. You got to know what the vision statement is. You have to know. If I ask you, what is your company's mission statement? You should be able to tell me. If you don't know what it is, you are not focused on the right things. You are part of a company. You're part of a team. You need to know the company's mission statement. So by knowing what the organization stands for, leaders can better align their personal traits to overarching goals. For example, if the mission emphasizes innovation and customer satisfaction, a leader's creativity and empathy would be highly relevant. Number three, feedback from others. Similar to how Blakely sought input to improve her product, leaders should also seek feedback from peers. None of us want to do that. None of us want anybody's opinion. I talk about that all the time. But if you want to be a great leader, you have to be the one person that actually wants that feedback from your peers, your mentors, your team members, even the ones that you don't like, especially the ones you don't like. This outside perspective can provide clarity on which personal qualities stand out and resonate with the team and the mission. Number 4, leveraging strengths. Leaders, you need to focus on the traits that come naturally to you. That's what's going to help you help the organization first and foremost. For instance, remember, Blakely was resilient. She had the ability to adapt. I'm sure she got a lot of rejection, like any salesperson does. If you're a salesperson out there, you know rejection, but you got to go to the next one, right? That's why Spanx had such great growth. She already knew what to expect, and so that she got turned down by all these companies until she got to the incredible Neiman Marcus. She was used to it, and it was probably good that all these other companies were like, we don't want to, because she ended up with Neiman Marcus, which ended up helping her get in front of Oprah. Leaders, ask yourself, which of my personal traits consistently drive results aligned with the mission? 5th, continuous alignment. Just like Blakely continually evolves with Spanx, leaders need to regularly assess their personal traits, step back, figure what is working, what is not. And remember, the organization's mission might not change, but the goals do, right? We have to change goals, because what if you start out with a certain amount of budgeting, and all of a sudden that goes up or down 3, 5, 6 months in? Has that ever happened to you? It happens to me. Happens all the time. Those things evolve. As the organization grows, a leader's self-awareness and adaptability ensure that they remain on the cutting edge. Those are just some of the things that you leaders need to be doing to make sure that you are aligning correctly to be effective. Know your traits, know your strengths, your weaknesses, and help those really fit in with the leadership goals that you have personally and with the company.
Yeah, we've talked about goals all the time and just how important they are. And a shameless plug here, but I mean, we are getting close to the new year. And I know, Mo, you've got a absolutely great outline for setting goals. And I am someone who just doesn't set goals. Like it's not something that I've done, but I did this last year with your help. And so if any of our listeners out there are thinking, man, I don't set goals, but I'd love to learn a new way, just reach out. We'd love to help you guys with that. So one of the things, though, you mentioned and you talked about is leveraging your traits. So leveraging those things that you are good at. Mo, why don't you go ahead and kind of wind us into that third point for today?
Yeah, that's great, Scotty. Point 3 is leveraging traits to inspire and influence others. That's what leaders do. So everybody knows who Nelson Mandela is. Even if you don't know much about him, you know who he is. You could probably see him on TV and say, hey, that's Nelson Mandela. Why? Because he was an inspirational character. Mandela's empathy and unwavering commitment to justice allowed him to inspire and unite people across South Africa, leading to a profound transformation in the nation's political landscape. The things that Nelson Mandela had to go through fighting against the apartheid of the time is incredible. Leaders, leverage your traits to inspire others, because it's going to create a ripple effect. Nelson Mandela took years, decades to create that ripple effect. Leaders, you need to influence team members to become leaders in their own right, not so that they are only good at what they need to be doing for your company, but building on their own brand. That's how you can help your people. Secondly, when leaders' actions are driven by the core traits, it not only influences their direct team, but it also sets the example for a wider community and the entire industry. Be that kind of leader.
Yeah. For those that are listening, pick up Long Walk to Freedom. So it's all about Nelson Mandela. And you mentioned that it took decades really for him to kind of build on those traits and kind of develop that and develop those underneath him as well. And I mean, that's so true. And if you're like, man, what could you do in a decade? What could you do in 3 decades? Pick up the book, read the book. It took him quite a long time. And so quite an amazing thing. And really his traits really were just such a beacon of hope. And it's amazing how even now how those traits and that impact that he's had has just lasted through the years, and not just kind of through the individuals that he worked with, but really just as on society as a whole.
Yeah. So, Scott, I really love that book, A Long Walk to Freedom. I've read it more than a couple times now. And I'm telling you, I get choked up every time. Talk about empathy, even to the point where he was imprisoned for several years. And, not to give a spoiler, because we've probably all heard a story, but until you read that book, you don't understand really the things that he had to go through. And
Well,
really,
and it wasn't a cushy, I hate to say cushy, but it wasn't a cushy prison in the United States. Like, it was a prison in Africa. Like, it was not the prison that you think
it
of when
was
you think
bad.
prison either. Yeah.
It was bad. It destroyed parts of his life. They really tried to break him down, and it just didn't work. He lost a lot, obviously, and had family struggles, but he was somebody who remained true. Leaders, you know that you have to make the decision before it happens. Mandela, he made the decision before. He decided, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm all about. You might be out there thinking, gosh, Mo, I don't even know what I'm about right now. How do I do it? Where do I start? Look no further. I'm glad you asked. Strengths-Based Leadership by Rath and Conchi, or StrengthsFinder 2.0, or both, actually. What those books do is they emphasize the importance of identifying your core strengths and using them to lead more effectively. But instead of telling you how incredible it is, I'm going to let Scotty tell you the impact that StrengthsFinder 2.0 and taking the strengths assessment changed his life. So, Scotty, why don't you go ahead and be the running commercial for why they need to read that book and take the assessment?
Way back now, when I was a freshman in college, I remember taking the StrengthsFinder assessment and popped out my 5 top strengths, and I thought literally nothing of it. And in all honesty, I couldn't even tell you what those were, because I have lost that and I have no idea where it went. But recently, probably about a year ago now, so I ended up, with your encouragement, doing the Strengths 34, which not only gives you those top 5 strengths, which is incredibly useful, but gives you all 34 strengths in the order in which they present themselves, kind of in your personality, in your character, in your life. And that has been so just life-changing. So mainly because I not only know what I'm great at and what I excel at, and you'll be surprised when you take this, because you're like, wow, that's exactly me. I also know what I'm not great at. So I know that when it comes to things like being futuristic, I got to find someone who's going to build that into the business that I work with. I got to find someone to get on the bus that is better at being futuristic than I am. Same with things like strategic, same with things like responsibility, like those things lower down for me. And so just creating opportunities to bring other people on and kind of fill that in. And it's just really changed the way that I live. But I was able to talk to some individuals the other day about it who had only done the 5 strengths, which was great. And it was great to talk to them about their strengths and kind of hear about it and how they've played out in their life. But beyond that, just encourage them, hey, you got to take Strengths 34. And I opened up my report, I keep it on my phone, and I was like, man, this is all the things that I've learned. Like, this is the extra information you get. And just the look in their eyes of like, wow, I would love to know what I'm not good at. And it's really just something that I would encourage each and every one of our listeners. If you haven't done it, do it. If you have a business, you have the ability to have your employees take it, do it. If you can convince your supervisors, your managers, your CEOs, whoever it is, to run it through the company, do it, because it creates a whole new world of cohesion.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that, Scott. And I get excited whenever people like yourself get fired up and excited about learning more about themselves. And it really does make a difference, not just from knowing about who you are, but how you can lead and inspire others. Your traits as a leader are about inspiring and influencing others. Remember, John Maxwell says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So if you don't know who you are, you cannot lead from who you are, because there's 2 parts of that. Once you know your strengths and your weaknesses, you lead from who you are to who they are. Knowing that Scott's number 1 strength is woo, which is winning others over, Scott doesn't meet strangers. He meets people who are going to be his friends, whether they like it or not, right?
Yeah.
So if I know that Scott is a woo, a winning others over, that's his number one, and I know this is, and I'm not joking here, woo is my number 34, it's the very last. Well, just because woo is my last and my top strengths are much different than Scott's, I have to lead from my strengths, but I have to lead to his strengths if he's on my team. And that's tough because if woo's his best and woo's my worst, which it is, I have to work extra hard as somebody who is leading the company, leading the team, because Scott wants to be led as a woo. Leaders, you need to know who you are. You need to know your strengths. You have to leverage those traits, the things that you are good at, what makes you a leader, so that you can lead to other people's strengths. And trust me, when you lead from your strengths to the strengths of your people, they're going to love working for you and love working with you.
Yeah, I highly recommend picking up those books, okay? Strength-Based Leadership, and then Strengths 2.0. If you really want to know more things too, like just make sure you guys get our listeners more than welcome. Reach out, schedule that discovery call with us. We'd love to talk to you a lot more about that. So, Mo, before we kind of wrap up today, do you have any final thought?
Just a quick one. Remember, leaders, understanding your leadership traits isn't a nice to have. It's fundamental to every aspect of what you do in leading a team successfully. So whether you're like Nadella, focusing on self-awareness, or you're like Blakely, who knew how to align traits with goals, or if you're like Mandela, who could leverage his traits to inspire others, your traits make a big difference in the way you lead your people.
Love that. What a great way to kind of finish up this episode. So for our listeners out there, look into your own traits, find those strengths. So it's a great place to start. Big thanks to everyone for tuning in today. And if you guys enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. Reach out, connect with us. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. You guys can hop over to our website. It's rtclc.com. You guys are more than welcome to check that out. Schedule a discovery call with us. We'd love to talk to you. Your guys' feedback obviously helps us connect with more leaders and bring you guys more valuable insights. So until next time, lead with purpose and stay authentic.